We did the training with our staff, and then that summer I went to and did the TOT
Yeah.
for thinking maps, and then I followed it up with TOT for right from the beginning.
Oh my God.
And so just having a better understanding as an administrator helps with the communication with the staff and what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
I don't claim to be an expert, just a practitioner. It's like so many things in education. If you do it, if you talk about it,
Yeah.
if you display it, if you model it, they begin to see the importance and relate to the importance and learn from that.
How many years ago was that you started?
3 years ago is when we did our first training, and then that summer I did the training, training of trainers.
Right.
And my wife's a teacher, so she did that with me. So we talk about it at home.
Do you use it at home at all?
Oh, yeah.
Really? How do you use
Sometimes we do budget things, or we've used it to plan trips and vacations. My son, we started teaching him some of the basic maps as he was trying to finish up his schooling and stuff. He actually went to the Dallas Sound Lab and became a sound engineer.
Fantastic.
But when we started showing him how to organize, get started, do projects, those kinds of things, he said, if I would have had this in school, I would have been so much more successful. Because for him, just getting something started was
Sometimes it's just that.
It's
like in knowing that you have not just one starting point, but multiple, and they're sort of drawn together.
kind of a neat experience on a personal level as well as on my
that's
campus and school
exciting.
level.
So you've really internalized it personally and family, and I think it almost just opens up the human capacities that we have to think, and so they're already there. It's just pathways for opening it up.
We go through these phases in education where we look at different things all the time. Well, Robert Marzano's done a lot of work in research on how people learn and how to assess that stuff. And one of the things he says is that compare and contrast is the strongest form.
That was the highest on that Marzano 9.
Yeah. Then you've got the learning communities. How do we communicate? How do we talk to each other?
When was the first time you really thought of, this would really support our leadership work and our collaborative work in the schools?
We use it in a lot of forms. The very first big project I did with it was to rewrite our faculty handbook. And we used the process of meeting with the staff and talking about what are the elements that you need to be included in the handbook. What things will help you? What are they? And we went back to the circle map. We brainstormed all the things that they felt they needed to know that would make the handbook a good reference for them. Then I took the circle maps they provided for us, put up a big long sheet of butcher paper in the hall outside my office, and categorized each of the areas, and each of those categories then became a section in the handbook. And so then we were able to draw things to a focus per category: traffic, attendance, and forms, and all those things fell into place. And then it was pretty easy for us to format and put together the materials we needed once we had the outline of how to put it together. That was kind of the first big project, and it was such help in getting it organized and getting it going. Then it kind of became a habit to, well, how do we want to map this? Let's look at it, and so we use it on budget. We use it on all those kinds of things. I use it in my walkthrough and evaluation process.
Oh, tell me about that. How do you do that?
It's the reflective piece. We do a 3-minute walkthrough in the classroom, and then we look to see if the teacher's lesson and the kids' activities are congruent with the curriculum and the scope and sequence. And in the scope and sequence, there's student expectations that are driven by a particular verb that puts the verb at a certain level on the taxonomy of learning. So we do a couple of things with the maps. One is we use it to generate reflective conversation or reflection about the lessons. One time after we'd done a number of walkthroughs, we realized we were getting an awful lot of large group direct teach going on in the classroom. So we framed up a reflective question about when you're choosing the style of presentation that you're going to choose for your students, what criteria do you use to determine what that will be? And we said in our past couple of weeks of walkthroughs, we've seen a lot of direct teach large group. So what we'd like you to do is break into groups and in this group, we want you to circle map that and talk about when is it a good idea to do direct teach? When is it the best choice?
So taking that positive, where there is a place for it.
And then we had another group, and we said, how about taking a double bubble and do a compare and contrast between direct teach as opposed to centers or guided instruction or individual practice, those kind of things. Give us some compare and contrast so we can do some sort of qualitative evaluation on that.
Sure.
And then another group, we asked them to just simply take and list as many different kinds of instructional presentation as they could think of, and then tree map that, categorize it.
Categorize different types,
how does it
nice.
work? Then we just did a share time after that. Share with us what you talked about. Let's take some notes, and then we'll come to some kind of a group conclusion about when direct teach is most effective. And that was the target, because we wanted to make sure that we didn't condemn it, because it can be a very good model.
Sure.
But at the same time, we were seeing probably more of it than we would like to.
Sure.
So by getting to do the reflective piece of that and mapping it, took it off of the personal level. So we weren't attacking them, but they were analyzing and processing doing that.
Wow.
And the other piece with our walkthroughs is to be congruent with that verb in the student expectations. We began to talk about which maps would line up with which verbs.
Fantastic.
So as they're starting to think about designing their lesson, knowing what the expectation of the verb is might help them choose.
What's an example of that?
There could be in a science lesson, there could be a categorize the animals in the pond.
Right.
Or,
and it's right there, isn't it?
Absolutely. Or obviously there's times where they will analyze or compare. Those kinds of verbs to get our teachers congruent with their scope and sequence, so that they're not only teaching the right content, but teaching at the right level.
And with thinking processes, grounding
thinking process that supports it. We really work hard at being a professional learning community, which really saturates your environment with collaboration if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
We've designed horizontal and vertical teams for the entire school. And the administrative staff, as well as all the teaching staff, serve on these different teams. But what we discovered right away was if we don't have a focused manner of directing the conversation and the communication, they can just become nice visit sessions where we talk and we have a good time and we don't get a lot of work done. Using the maps helps us a lot. One of the things that is most helpful in a collaborative environment is the frame.
Yes.
Where do we create the focus? And what is the outcome that we'd like to see? What are the references that we're going to use? And then depending on what we're talking about, we select a different map to guide the conversation. I really think that they've been supportive of us being able to start thinking in terms of how we approach things and how we think about things. We're always faced with those two questions: what and how. What and how. And the frame, if we use a frame, it'll generally give us the focus on what, and then how.
Interesting.
We can talk about a sequence or a timeline.
So the different process within the frame.
Yeah.
What's the link between, and I'm curious about this, between using these same tools for leadership and working as a learning community, and then the teachers using the maps, the tools with the kids? What's that link? I mean, how is it? Is there something you can point to and how that really supports the community?
Without being oversimplistic.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
Is thinking.
Yeah.
You know, for so many years, we've gone through the social discussion and education. We've got to teach people to think. And for so long, the way we decided to do that was just give them a whole lot more to deal with, instead of giving them a quality process that allowed them to utilize a tool that helped guide the right kind of thinking. And I think that the link there is choosing what kind of thinking is going to help you be successful with the task that you're doing. So in a classroom, a teacher may have a lesson that they're doing, and if they've got different groups working, the kids may choose different maps and different ways to approach that, depending on what they want their outcome to be. So modeling that for teachers, I think, is part of that whole vertical lineup.
Yeah.
I think the maps lend themselves to that process because it gives you the flexibility. Once you've started into it to determine how you will arrange it, what that end product's going to look like. Will it be a presentation? Will it be a PowerPoint? Will it be a product? Will it be...
Is there something in the maps that you saw that just sort of seemed to reflect something in your core beliefs around education?
Learning has to be relevant to the individual. And that for any child or adult or anybody else to be successful with their process, whether it's a child learning in a class or a teacher producing a lesson assignment or a principal producing a handbook, that individuality has to come through in the ability for them to perceive what they're doing, find an individual approach that allows them to manage the materials or manage the information, and then ultimately to be able to be successful getting to that end point, whatever that end point's going to be. I think a lot of it has to do with having a value for individual people and giving them the flexibility to work within a frame. Lockstepping people on lessons and lockstepping children all doing the same lesson in every classroom seemed awfully archaic to me. So what I told my staff at that time was, we have to create the framework so that everybody learns what they need to learn. They meet the expectations. But within that framework, you as a teacher have to be allowed to be the artist who determines how you'll do that with each of your kids. Your kids have to have the flexibility within that framework to approach it from an understandable position at their level. And I guess that may be why when I saw the thinking maps to begin with, it just sort of was like, oh, well, that's what I meant.
Well, that idea, it crystallized in that phrase of flexibility within the frame. I've never heard that sort of brought together like that, and that seems to me a very a nice synthesis of what the maps are in an attempt to do.
When we talk about all the troubles of education in our country, and kids are not getting this, not getting that, it's because the frame is not clearly defined. And if we clearly define the frame so that we're meeting those expectations and we understand what those specific standards are and those kinds of things, then we can allow the flexibility and I like the word artistic flexibility because I think teachers are artistic.
Absolutely.
At how they approach that.
A lot of folks look at the maps and they look, oh, it's awfully constraining. Yet there's tremendous flexibility. And the artistic value of it, I mean, they are drawn. There's something about drawing out your thinking and seeing those patterns and the richness and the idiosyncratic ways you can move them.
And we know that with kindergartners. Somehow we forget that by the time we get up here. When we have kindergarten kids, we say, write a sentence and draw me that picture. By the time they're seniors in high school, we've forgotten.
When we were talking about the leadership and learning, what's the connection? You said thinking, which is that idea. We often talk about lifelong learning and, improving thinking abilities, but it does seem to me that that's sort of the essence of the tools, is that it's really about that. And if we're doing, everybody in the learning community is about that, and this is a language we're doing it, we're going to be in a different place.
There's a lot of different words that come to mind, like tool, process, those kinds of things, but I'm not sure that any of those words actually do full service to what it's about.
There's this assumption, if they get more content, they will then almost by that action develop their thinking, but it isn't necessarily the case.
I don't think it's the case at all.
Right.
I think content is important, but there was a time in education, maybe 100 years ago, where a quality student could be expected to learn the body of information. That's not even fathomable in our world today.
21st century living.
Exactly.
Global economy.
Right. So we've got to learn to manage content that is important and vital to us, and then we've got to learn how to process and think.
And most of the time, those are grounded in some sort of pattern of thinking. So if the maps are used within that intuition, and then also really reflectively, you've got a different kind of problem solving.
In Texas, the governor decided, I think he said 65% of all the funds have to be spent on classroom. So they changed our budgeting process in our district. So we got two divisions of budget now. One's content-based and one's basic expenditures based, and they give us an allotment per area. And for me to try to figure that out seemed like a huge job. So I got my butcher paper out again, put tree map up in the hall, and just put budget as the subject, and then categorized each of the areas. And then I met with my leadership team and said, meet with your teams, have them talk about their needs and things, and then come in and fill out the amounts you need underneath, and then I'll encapsulate that into our presentation for the budget. It took a very, very big problem, and the whole school shared it, became this big, filled out the forms and sent it in. And the other thing it does is it doesn't hide anything from my staff. They know what the budget is. They know where it comes from. They know how much we're dealing with. They don't feel like I'm sitting in the office with this hidden
and micromanaging
little pieces out to them.
Yeah.
And it empowers them. They are the ones that determine what they need.
There's something very public about the maps.
Yeah.
In that way. There's a sort of almost a democratization, because everybody's using a common language and you see it, rather than, side discussions or who's got power over whom.
I'm never really put off by a problem or a challenging question or something, because I feel like I have an approach. And we have a pretty strong belief on my campus, at least in my respect, is that I always believe that we, us, is smarter, faster, and stronger than I, me. So as soon as I look at it a little bit, pull other people in and have them start getting in the process.
So that collaborative thinking.
Back to that collaborative.
So the learning community is together, in a sense, improving the thinking and the capacity to problem solve together.
They've been involved in the thinking. They've been involved in the decision making. They've been involved in arriving at the agreement at the end.
Yeah.
They feel empowered, but they also feel ownership in what we're doing.
It's also what we're trying to do with this research and interviewing people, and is attempting to surface some of these and then being able to share it. So what you're, even the sort of the synthesis of that flexibility within the frame and the idea of how we're thinking together and how it's public, all these things, I think we're seeing these as themes. So if we're able to articulate those in a way and then bring it back to people, that we can, I think all these things are sort of happening in ways, but people may not have gotten the clarity about it happening, so because people are in process. So it's hard to sort of step back and say, what is going on here?